What y'all got?
Jimbo, interesting times for college football, transfer, NIL, all this. I don't know if you're aware Gene Smith at Ohio State is recommending you shift that.
I saw a portion of that. I didn't get the whole story.
What would you?
I don't know what he's.
What he's suggesting is it has its own leadership structure, perhaps away from the NCAA, maybe under the umbrella of the college football playoff. Any thoughts you have about where college football is headed and what needs to be done?
I don't know. I haven't put that much thought to it, but it's inevitable. Something's happening and going to happen. There's the change right now that we're going through daily, weekly, monthly, whenever you want to say hourly. It goes like crazy. So could there be something like that? It wouldn't shock me. But I still think there's a lot of moving parts that have to be put in place before things like that happen. But listen, that's what commissioners and ADs are for. We're here to try to recruit, coach, and do what we got to do. But I mean, there's going to be some kind of separation, I would imagine, in time. But how quick that is, that's anybody's guess. Now, as you said, how quick do we think NIL was coming? How quick do we think transfer portal was coming? That could, we thought it'd be, and that happened overnight. Could it happen overnight? Could it? I think there's too many things. When you're starting that part of it, probably with contractual obligations with bowls and TV contracts and conference but I don't know. Now they may be able to work around that in a shorter time, but it wouldn't shock me.
When you're talking about a change, are you talking about the quote unquote big schools moving away?
Yeah, I'm just talking about the Power Five conference, or the 85 scholarship limit conferences. There's 10 conferences, I believe. However they want to transfer that, or it's 5. I mean, it wouldn't shock me one way or the other how that all pans out. You never know. It's amazing how quickly things have changed now. So it'll be interesting, that's for sure. But hey, whatever it is, we'll have to adapt.
When you look at NIL and where that's going with these collectives, do you feel like that the system how it is now is good? Do you think there needs to be some guardrails on? There
has to be some kind of rules and guardrails. There's no doubt when things are. I mean, all the because, like I said, usually you go ready, aim, shoot. We went ready, shoot, aim. Because every state kind of did its own thing and have uniform rules and laws and everything that goes with it. And I think that should definitely be in place. And now whoever can put that in place, I think it's a very touchy matter as far as I think from the legal system and all the things that go on in that. But I think something has to be done to have some uniformity, to have some consistency.
So from an at-home perspective, how has having collective around helped, and how have you seen it affect the players that you have?
It really hasn't affected our guys. I mean, as far as how they play, what they do, we're not involved in that. So we can't be involved in that. So it hasn't, I mean, from that facet of it, in my opinion, it hasn't been a factor. I mean, guys have them. I don't know what they are, don't know when they are, but it's not a big component as far as the way I see them act or play or participate or anything like that.
What are some of the things in the years moving forward you think I've seen some coaches talking about potentially guys coming in kind of with big deals and they haven't necessarily done anything on the field quite yet, just the challenge of kind of motivating players.
It's just like you're doing in pro ball. I mean, it's what you're basically doing. So I don't know. I haven't had those, so I guess we'll all have to address those as they come. But I think there's only certain states, if I'm not, is there 5 states, I may be wrong on that have ability to do that in high school. Is that right, or does anybody know that? I don't know. I mean, I know Texas doesn't, so I think that's why originally why Ewers went to Ohio State early in what he did and then came back. But I mean, because you couldn't have him in high school sports here in Texas. I mean, I think that's a really tough avenue when you get into the high school game brand of that thing. So I've never had to deal with that, so I can't answer that.
Is there any specific guardrails you'd like to see put in place?
Listen, I don't know enough. I haven't sat down to think about it, but there have to be. All I'm gonna say, there has to be uniformity. There has to be uniformity, in my opinion, to make it fair for everybody across the board.
Jimbo, it wasn't that long ago you were here when Kenyon Green was the high school player of the year in Houston. I know you were here with us on that night. Have you been marveled at his progression, or is he just that talented, that dedicated, and all those things?
He's that way. He's been that way since the day. I mean, he's been a 3-year starter. Started from day one, from the day he got here. Very talented, but very, as I say, as gifted as he is. That's the least thing you need to worry about. I mean, it's who he is, his character, his intelligence, his work ethic, all the intangibles. I always tell our players, let the intangibles, because those are choices you make about who you are, be what you live on. Let your talent be the last thing you rely on. And that is now he's extremely talented, but he has all the intangibles that a great player has and a great teammate has, a great person has, and then you combine that with great physical skills, you have a great player, and that's what you got, and I think Houston got him a tremendous player.
What'd you make of just the fact that not only the 4 draftees, but I believe the note that everyone working out at that pro day received at least some type of invitation?
Yeah, 'cause that's it. The key is, do you make it? You know, how many guys do you make it with? I mean, that's what, 2 years in a row we've had 4 draftees. I think the year before we had 4. We had 4 then. I can't remember the year before. And the year before that was like 6 or 7. But a lot of our guys are sticking. When they're getting there, they're in systems that when they get in, like they all come back and say, Coach, it was just like practice. We practice the same way. The systems are the same. The plays are the same. That's, you know, it may be called tomato, but the schemes of it, you know, are exactly the same as allowing them to be successful. And that's the big thing. Can they make it? And can they stick on teams? And very happy with that for those guys.
When you took this job almost 5 years ago,
Mhm.
were you fully aware of how much talent was in this area in particular? Because you leaned on a lot of Houston guys, obviously.
Well, Houston's always had players in the history of this game. And I know the state of Texas had players, you know, and I think the whole country has players. But and that's why we try to recruit the best players out of Texas that can win an SEC championship, a national championship, and try to get drafted, you know, very highly in the draft. And like I say, that our first full class was Kenyon's class. That was our first full class of recruiting. That was the first year we got to recruit. We got him and Liao out there. They were really good players, and Spiller, Wiedemeyer, and I think Damani, and I can't. There's a bunch of others in that group, I think. But that was the first full one, and you knew that Houston has always had players. And I've been out of state. We've recruited guys from Houston. We've recruited guys from Dallas. When I was at Florida State, when I was at LSU, I mean, I've always known, because being in the LSU, I've always known that, you know, we came to Houston hard to get players. Had a lot of races, Joseph Adai, and a lot of guys that didn't even get recruited in this state. I mean, which happens. You have a state this big, that's going to happen. And I was at Florida State. You have Marvin Wilson and some other guys we got. Other guys we got. Mario Edwards out of Dallas. So I mean, we've known Houston and Dallas has always had players.
What makes you believe that Isaiah Spiller can fit in well in the NFL?
I think he's very diverse. He has great size. He's a very natural runner. Runs between the tackles. Runs outside. Pass blocks and can catch the football. I mean, and he's a very intelligent guy. He's a very competitive guy. He's had 3 1,000 yards. He's been highly productive. I mean, think of his production. He's had 3 1,000-yard seasons. Well, one was right at his freshman was 990 or 980 or whatever it was. But basically, he's had over 3,000 yards in 3 years, which is incredible, and caught 30-some balls a year. So, I mean, he's been very productive. We've used him very well. He's been a great player for us. And he's a high-character young man. Again, very intelligent. I think he'll pick up schemes. And the system he's been in, he'll be able to adapt. And plus, he can run between the tackles, and he can run outside.
Jimbo, when you have,
You know, and is makes long runs. For a guy that is not a blade, he's not a 4-3, 4-4 guy, but he makes long runs. He plays fast. You know what I mean? That's the other thing I think is very important in pro ball.
Jimbo, when you have 4 defensive linemen going on to the NFL, 2 drafted, 2 signed in free agent deals, how can you hope to be as
Recruiting, and
as
then what
good
you do.
as in next season?
Well, that's what you develop over time. Hopefully, we build enough culture and consistency, and that's what we were able to do at LSU back in the day, and that's what we were able to do at Florida State. When guys rotated, I mean, the Jernigans, the Goldmans, Mario Edwardses, and then the next year you bring in Derek Nottie and all the other Marvin. We bring in a lot of those guys. I mean, guys always go. You just keep recruiting every year, and you got to recruit guys in your hand in the dirt in this league. So, and I think we have a chance to have another really good group up front. We've recruited well.
You made a comment, I think, last week about Shamar Turner.
Jamar,
You
I mean,
said
all
something
those guys.
about meeting with God, he's getting so much bigger. I was just wondering to clarify what you're actually
Well, I
doing.
mean, this guy's getting so much bigger and stronger. I mean, you know, he's 285 pounds, but he's 295 now. He's almost 300 pounds consistently. And what I'm saying is, as you mature, you're not getting fat. Your body grows. You put on weight, you put on power, you put on strength. He's becoming a very big, powerful young man. I mean, so I had him listen to 285 saying playing at D. He's 295 pushing 300, probably be 305 before the year's out. And I mean, still running just as faster, and getting stronger. I mean, those young guys, their bodies are starting to develop in those classes that we've had since, just like I say, art, they're just starting to mature into where they can play.
Last time you visited with us, you mentioned specifically needing to make changes with your strength and conditioning program, and obviously you have a new coach there. You said we're going to make some changes. What
I
are
made
those
changes. I mean, Smitty was elected to go, but Smitty did a great job for us. Smitty did a great job for us, and it was a chance for him to go back home. Him and Bob are very close and get back to running that program and things, and he wanted to go back, and he has relatives, family, and that's great. But I think Red does a great job, too. He's been with us for a long time, does a lot of things we did at Florida State, different transitional things, and I think we'll incorporate some new things, but not that we needed. So Smitty did an outstanding job. Just like he said when he left. I mean, he loved A&M and loved being here. He's just a chance to go home with family and friends and be where he's at. And same way with Red, I think he'll do that. And I think, you're ever changing in speed, change of direction, and all that. But, I mean, that's the thing you got to realize. Our guys now, kids today, don't just train with you. They go train with everybody else. And when you go to the when they get done with you, as far as when they graduate, like when their time is done, they don't train at school anymore. They go for 3 months with a trainer or where their agent takes them and what they do. So there's a lot of people interacting with those guys, and they got to make sure they get the right guys. And all those guys are professionals at that. Those agents are, and get to those programs all over the country. Like a bunch of our guys trained in Miami, some trained in Houston, some trained in Dallas, some trained in Arizona. That's the 4 main places I know of. I think some in California. They do that. But I think Red, on our guy, I think he'll do it. He does as good a job as anybody. And our guys in the off season have really loved the workouts and things we're doing.
Jimbo, what did Connor
Go ahead.
Wiggins show you in the spring?
A lot of consistency.
Where did he maybe make the most progress for you?
I think just overall conceptually of leading a team, being in front of a college football team, and playing with the speed of the game. He was, both first scrimmages he played. We do good on good in the spring. A lot of teams do ones on twos, twos on ones, so it becomes distorted. We go ones on ones. I like to get in the spring especially. And he went with drives in the first 2 scrimmages with the one offense against the one defense and put points up on the board and did a really nice job. And but played with good consistency. But the other 2 I thought played outstanding too. But Connor has a chance, I think, to be a really, really good football player because he's driven to do it. He's intelligent, has a lot of instinctual things that he can process the information and get it from here to here. Like he can see it and then get it to his hands and his feet and be able to make those throws and whether speed it up, slow it, speed his hands up, slow him down, which is a very big thing of you have to do in your feet. It's like that's why he's such a good baseball player. I mean, you get fooled on that pitch, you either got to slow him down, speed him up in his hands, and I think he's is very natural at both of those things, and I think I thought had an outstanding spring for a freshman.
I would not suggest that he's a team leader as a first semester freshman, but his leadership traits were obvious as we followed him in high school.
No, and I thought he did there. I think our players related to him, and like I say, leadership doesn't always have to be rah-rah, but they have confidence in you out there playing. You know what I'm saying? And feel comfortable in the game, and they did. Our players did that with him.
Would Stowers request to move back to quarterback, or how did that work out? Or is he back at quarterback?
He's back at quarterback when he will, as his shoulder gets better. He wants it because his shoulder was hurt, and he had a labrum that was bothered, so he's get that fixed, and hopefully he can still do what he has to do. If not, we'll make adjustments and go. We'll give him a shot there, and that's where he wanted to play back and have no problem with that at all.
When you look at Isaiah and where he went in the draft, and Jalen and some of those guys who decided, were you surprised at where Isaiah went and maybe some of those guys?
And that's actually where he was called. That's actually where he's predicted to go. And the things we got back was a lot of second and third round predictions, possible fourth. I mean, anywhere in that range was kind of where it was at. What we got back. Jalen was the same. Jalen had I think come back as a fourth round grade in that scenario. But now I think both guys can make it and will play. I mean, Jalen, you got to understand how productive they were for us. I understand Wiedemeyer was a runner-up for the Mackey Award. What did he catch? First year he caught 6 or 7 touchdowns as a freshman, caught 6 or 8 last year, was a leading receiver as a sophomore, had a phenomenal year. Didn't have quite as good a year this year, but I think that's two things. I mean, sometimes you press, but I think also the change at quarterback early, I think, affected him. And we had to play 2 freshman linemen. We had Luke Matthews and Colton Blanton. We had 2 starters that were high draft picks get hurt, and we had to play 2 freshman linemen. So the first part of that year, there's adjustments there. So your production, you may not get the ball quite as much in where you're at, and things that went on. So, but I still think Jalen's going to be an excellent player, and I think he'll play up there, and he can make plays with the ball. And the thing about him, Jalen is an extremely athletic guy. I mean, and I say, just like I said, Spiller is not a 4-4 guy, but he makes long runs. And when I mean he can run, he's in the 4.5s. But I mean, he plays fast. Jalen's the same way. Jalen's not going to go out there and run a fast 40 time. But he can play. He was a basketball player. He's very athletic, tremendous ball skills, great balanced body control guy, and I think can play up there. I really do. I think, and he's a very smart guy, very intelligent.
Is there something you can do when that happens, where you have a guy that produces well for you, and then the testing numbers don't match that production, and it sort of drops him like it happened with James?
Well, testing now goes back to, like I say, who they go test with. They're not with us the last 2 or 3 months. They go test, and they're with other people when they go test. They train at wherever they do. Now, usually that turns out good, but some guys, I've had great guys that weren't fast speed guys, but played in the league a long time. I can remember one time Josh Reed for us when I was at LSU. He'd never played receiver. The first year he caught 67 balls for 1,300. The next year he caught 108 for 1,900 and come back as a second-round grade. And you said, okay, I'm coming back. I said, no, we're not. Because when you get into the first round, there's measurables you have to have. Size, length, speed. I mean, you got to be exceptional in those numbers, not just production. You know what I'm saying? And he was a guy who was 5'10", 205 pounds that ran 4.65. But he was a leading receiver in SEC history in 2 years. He went and played 9 years in the league, and his draft status, he could have went and caught. He got 108. I mean, couldn't have caught any more balls. You know what I'm saying? And done any better. There's measurables that you have to have that get you in the first round, and that's why you see guys that go in the first round. Sometimes they don't have the production. I mean, for instance, the first pick of the draft this year didn't have production based off what? Measurable numbers. because he could run and jump. But he's a really great football player. And sometimes, was he played out of position or did they put, whatever it may be. But people like measurables. You got to have size, speed to get in that first round. There's certain measurables. Kenyon was going to be a guy 6'4", 325 with an 83-inch wing. He had measurables, then the film matched up. You know what I'm saying? So usually you have to have, even though the film, you have great production, if you don't have measurables, and generally measurables sometimes will play over production occasionally in the first round on certain schools. Not just how you go. Being the first round is a picky thing. I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen.
How does that dynamic kind of go into recruiting and your evaluations of high
Big
school
time.
prospects?
And I've had so many first-round guys and guys that have made it. Like I said, when I left Florida State, we had 52 guys in the league. I mean, so we had as many as anybody. And so I know what they look like, how they do, and you use that experience in what you're doing and how you develop guys and where you get them to. So, I mean, I've had plenty. We're starting now. We're starting our first rotation of, like I say, our first-round pick came in right now. That was our first full class, and hopefully, it'll go and build up, and we'll get more and more guys in the draft. That means you usually have better players, and you can play better.
Since you know what a first round draft choice looks like, does Devon A-Chain fit into that?
It depends on what you do size-wise. Just depends on what your deal is. Can be, he's very fast, he's athletic, how productive he is, but he has world-class speed. So that can be, that's one of those intangibles that people love. They love speed. A-Chain and he's highly productive. Remember, last year he averaged 7 yards a carry. Spiller averaged, 5.5 or 6, and he averaged 7. So, I mean, you can't get much better out of that and what you're doing. So he's a guy that could. Is he going to meet you size-wise? No, but great back. You don't have to be that way. And he's a world-class sprinting guy, and his production and the thing he has is phenomenal hands. I mean, guys can catch the ball, but he has phenomenal hands. So there's a possibility. That goes on production, how he goes. And, again, it goes back to what a team needs and also how many running backs go in the first round. How many went in the first round this year?
I don't even know.
Zero.
It's zero. So, I mean, that depends. I mean, sometimes, like this year, there was a big run. Sometimes it'll be a run on back, and there's other years they go in the first round. The first time 6 wideouts have went in the first round. I mean, it goes back and forth with whatever the league's doing, what they need, what teams need, and one quarterback. I mean, think about that. You had one quarterback, no backs in the first round, but you had 6 wideouts and a bunch of offensive tackles, a bunch of defense. It just depends on where the draft is.
What do you envision for Devon next season as the first time he's the featured back?
In what way?
Well,
We'll hand him the ball, we'll throw him the ball, and let him touch it as many possible times as he can do it, and within to keeping him healthy and what he has to do. And I'll tell you what, he's a good pass blocker too. People don't realize he does a good job pass blocking. He's a physical guy. He's strong. Because he's short, he's not little. I mean, he's not much different than Travion Williams was, who had 1,700 yards. I mean, and what he did, Travion's just a little bit heavier than him, basically the same size, who had great production. I mean, remember, he had 1,700. Spiller's had 3. We've had 1,700, 1,000, with we almost had 2,000-yard guys last year, the running back. So, I mean, I think he's going to be an extremely productive guy in what he does and where he goes. And because I'm going to tell you the thing about him, too, you don't realize. Not only he's very natural as a player, but he is a highly, highly competitive guy and a very intelligent guy. You can do a lot of things with him. Really intelligent football player. Really intelligent football player.
Jimbo, can we get one more question?
Yeah, keep going. We're good.
Jimbo, I apologize. I had the time wrong. But could I get a comment on Kenyon Green and what the Texans?
You got an hour?
That young man? Yeah.
I joke. I mean, like I said before, one, you have a physical guy who's 6'4", 325 pounds, and he can play guard or tackle because he has an 83-inch wingspan, which is like most tackles. Guys are 6'6", 6'7". And a lot of guys block you, and other guys he can move the big guys, and he's athletic enough to block the skilled guys, and that's a rare combination. And plus, he has extra arm length and big hands that when he gets his hands on you, or gets that, you may beat him, and then all of a sudden he can get that last push to protect and things. But then I say all the intangibles you talk about: character, toughness, team, winning, sacrifice, play banged up, play bruised up, play. All the things if you draw on the sides, does he have all these? Check, intelligence. I mean, you can't do it. And then you combine that with great athletic ability, you have a great player. I mean this, I don't mean, I'll be shocked if he doesn't have an unbelievable career in pro football, and I think it's sky's the limit for him.
I saw a couple of critics saying that he drew too many flags. He was like a flag magnet. What?
No, not Kenyon.
Have that?
Not Kenyon. That was somebody else.
4 new starters in the offensive line last year, sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he
That's
didn't.
what
I don't think he had
help out.
1 or 2. Kenyon didn't have many flags, and that
So, trying to help.
that I I can remember he had maybe one. I mean, occasionally you're gonna have one. You're up front. He wasn't a big flag guy that I can remember, unless I'm going crazy. I don't think he was. Now Kenyon, listen, isn't that what people do? I mean, I said that. It's funny. Half the draft picks, the guy just had the best day of his life. Gets drafted in the first round. Families hugging him, loving him. Fans are happy. Well, this guy can't do this. He shouldn't have picked him in the 20th pick. They should have took these 7 guys. This guy should have fell the second round. He just had the greatest moment of his life, and immediately, instead of everybody patting him on the back and of what he's accomplished in his lifetime, every critic on TV, except now some of them they said was a good pick. The other half they said, I mean, so those kids, I mean, you're always going to have critics when you play ball. I mean, that's there's going to be things everybody wants, and hey, you know what I say to all them critics? Just coach for about a year and then come back and talk to me.
Jimbo, well, what did it show you when he stepped in at center, when the center got injured?
We did it in practice. Plays all the positions. And I'll tell you this. I always say this. Kenyon, this week, we got a better matchup at right side. We had some young linemen. You better be on the right, be on the left. Yes, sir. I mean, there wasn't even, Coach, that's going to affect my draft status. That's going to affect me. And like he said, Coach, you know what it's going to do? It's going to help my draft status because it's going to expand my horizons of what people could see me do. That was his whole attitude on everything. We always we teach guys to play center. I always say this. Quarterback, center, kicker, long snapper, those are things that are extremely hard to simulate. There's just so much different than other positions. You can move receivers around, DBs around, but we teach as many guys as we can possibly do this. And that situation occurred last year in the bowl game because McCollum, he had a tough back, and he had COVID all that whole week and hardly ever practiced until he had about 4 days of practice at the end. So getting him back in there, but we had preparation just in case something happened, and he snapped. But he had been doing it all year. We'd done it since he'd been here. We work probably 7, 8 guys consistently at center because you don't ever know when you need one of them. What you're doing? Yes, sir. Go ahead. I'm good.
Okay. 2 years ago, y'all beat every team except Alabama. Last year, you beat Alabama. What's in your mind the next step, and how close are you to beating them?
Just consistency. We didn't finish some games last year. We had chances to make plays. In the Ole Miss game, we got down in the game and then had a chance to catch a ball, and we dropped the ball that puts us ahead. Then we gave up a 3rd and 10. Didn't make some plays at the end. Ole Miss, LSU, we drive down and go ahead. Then we took the punt. It was a fumble. They didn't give it to us. Game was over. But then we gave up a drive. They made a drive and hit a pass, and they made plays. You got to finish, and I think we're very close. We finished the year before. We didn't finish a couple games last year. And we had some turnover early with injuries. Like I say, you lost your quarterback, lost your center, lost your tackle, 2 of your receivers, and 2 starting corners early in the year. And we didn't adjust well and still had chances to win the Arkansas and Mississippi State games. But, you got to play great football. We got to play consistent, do the things we did like we did before. We had last year, 2 years ago, I thought we were the second-best team in this country. Thought we should have been in the playoff, and I'd like to have had one more shot at them. I don't know if we could beat them. They had a great team. But we were a heck of a team at the end of the year. I thought we were the first. That's the first one-loss SEC team that's never been in a playoff or a national championship game in the history since the BCS started, except for Auburn in 2004. Every one of them else. And you have one team win it with 2 losses, if you go back and look at it. So, we had a chance to be in there, and we were in a great shape there. But it doesn't matter. You got to do it every year. And last year we still had, even though we were young and injured and some things, and there is no excuses. You have to finish those games. We got to finish more. And yes, I think we're right there to be able to finish. I think we're a talented team, and I think here's a good thing. You only got 11 seniors on this whole group. There's still only 11 seniors on this football team when you go all the way through it. So there's a chance to have some really good teams, and I think we're just now, and our recruiting is hitting another level. We're taking things to a different place. We're perceived differently across the country. People see us as a place that we can win, be very successful. And that's why we're hitting the big-time players in Texas. That's why the national guys are coming here. The guys across the country, they come here and see A&M and what we're doing and what we have a chance to do, and the staff that's done it and people who have done it. And they know we can coach, recruit, play, and we have good facilities. And we also have a life after ball for them with the 12th man. And they see where we're at. And I think we have a chance to have a really good program from here on out. And we have to finish those games and play.
All right, Coach, thanks so much.
Thank you.